You are now tuned into Flippin the Brids, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flippin the Brids.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to episode 205 of Flippin the Brids. I'm Brian Cameron, and yes, I was late today, not Zach. Alongside Zach Chavalella, alongside Mike Greger. How you guys feeling today?
Good.
I'm good. Mike, how you doing? Nice to have you on. How you been?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Just been busy with. I just have a lot of events with this PR stuff I'm doing for a couple of breweries down in Delaware. But caught up here, getting back into the groove of it, watching Phillies every night, and just chilling, getting ready for the. Actually, big breaking news for me. I'm going to be going to Paris, France.
Oh, nice.
Ooh,
Sunday
fancy.
night. I'm leaving. Yeah.
Nice. How long?
So going for a week to Paris for my fiance's birthday, just hanging out, eating, drinking a lot of cognac. Drinking a lot of cognac, eating a lot of food.
Drinking and eating all the cognac.
A friend of mine has tasked me with finding another Eagles fan and doing a chant in Paris. So I am going to bringing some form of gear, whether it's a hat or a hoodie, and my mission is to make a video. So look for that.
You should sabotage that like prematurely and just hit up Liam and be like, yo, just head over to Paris one day next week.
You act like it's down the street, Brian.
It's not. I know it's not down the street. I'm just saying, like, Liam deserves a vacation as well. Right?
England, France, it's fine.
European
he
stuff.
there.
Yeah, and those trains, they go anywhere, though. It's not like here.
Yeah, right?
That's true.
Trains only go from here to New York City.
Yeah. Like $200 one way.
Bro, I don't want to go over there for. Hey, but shout out to Ron, who was actually the first person on the podcast tonight. He was earlier than all of us, and he was on time. Speaking on time, the Eagles officially retired for Fletcher Cox today. I feel like it was quite some time ago that it was actually official, but it's officially official as of today. 91 is actually, calling it a career. I feel like he had one more year left in him after last season. He looked pretty impressive last season. How do you guys feel if, Fletcher kind of is right into the sunset at I don't want to say the height of his career, but at least, in good shape?
Yeah, it's obvious that he wasn't cooked when he retired, and I think that's something that is important to certain players, and I respect it, and I would even recommend it on certain occasions. Jason Kelsey's another guy who's still performing at a high level when he retired, and obviously that happened this same year here. And for Fletch to be able to end his career on a relatively good note, not the note that he wanted, obviously, and I probably wanted to go out on a Super Bowl, but to end still playing pretty well, not even just well for his age, but just well. I'm sure that's something that he's happy about, and definitely seemed like it was a little bittersweet when he was taking the stand on the press conference earlier today. But surrounded by family, he had a lot of crazy amount of family there with him today, and that matters to Fletch. So, now having this time, he talked about, I think he said he was going to be watching his nephew play some football. Just a good opportunity for Fletch to enjoy his family now. So I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, he probably could have played another year, maybe 2 years. I mean, he looked good in spurts last year. And with the commitment to the defensive tackle position that the Eagles have made, he probably could have strung it out if he wanted to, but he probably looked at all the fun that Kelsey was having. It was like, it's time to walk away. And it's like if they were Super Bowl runners up again, and it's like, okay, we're knocking on the door again. I'm going to get this another ring next year, but that's not guaranteed with this roster. We kind of we kind of don't know. I mean, they should be good, but after what happened last year, we kind of don't really know. And he probably was like, let's go. Let's hang him up while I can still walk and I don't have any major injuries and I still have an outside shot at the Hall of Fame. I don't think he gets in, but I mean, he did talk about it earlier today.
And with both of them retiring, it's a little bit of an eye-opening move, right? You know, you see them both leave right into sunset in a year where you feel like Philly has a Super Bowl in sight after signing players like Saquon Barkley, Bryce Huff, Devin White, but you know they did move away from Hassan Reddick. I mean, is there going to be a huge void in the locker room now that these two are gone, or do you feel like they were grooming the guys like Jalen Hurts, they were grooming guys like Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, or anybody of that sort to be the next leaders of this locker room?
Yeah, I think it's impossible not to take a step back, but maybe you take one step back, 2 steps forward next year. That's I think the mentality is just kind of gearing these guys up to continue to grow more and more every year. Jalen Carter's not going to be ready to be Fletcher Cox next season. I think it'd be unfair of anyone to ask that specifically of him. When you look at kind of leadership on the offensive line, I mean, obviously you still have Lane Johnson there. I would say Landon Dickerson, based on his comments at the press conference for his extension earlier this year, he's looking to take on a bit more of that leadership role. So I'd expect it more so out of him than necessarily Cam Jurgens, who's the positional replacement for Jason Kelce. But yeah, I think some of these guys are definitely going to be a bit more ready for a more vocal role than they were last season. But it's just a bit unfair to expect these guys to be Fletcher Cox or to be Jason Kelce, obviously on the field. But if you're even just talking from a leadership perspective, it's going to be more of a process than that.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I mean, I know Fletch was one of the core 4, whatever they call him now, but he never came across to me as like the vocal leader that the team was hinging on his every word, where Kelce was that guy, obviously. So losing Kelce is the really hard part for them to deal with. But like Zach said, you still got Lane Johnson. Brandon Graham's coming back. Mulata's another guy who's talked about taking that next step towards leadership. So Kelce's the one you're going to have to worry a little bit about replacing just because he was so fiery and so, just got it, right? But I wouldn't worry so much about losing the leadership aspect of Fletcher Cox. I think more so with him, it was, like we said, there was still some production coming out of him.
So I got to push back on that for a quick second, and here's why. So he was not the rah-rah Brian Dawkins kind of guy, Jason Kelce kind of guy for sure. But something that they talked about at the press conference today that kind of opened up my eyes, because I never really thought of Fletcher Cox as much of a leader over his time here. Fletch was the guy who kept Brandon Graham in check, kind of his big dom to Brandon Graham, Sirianni, if you will. And as soon as they brought that up, I thought back to so many times. There's more times than I can count over their years in Philadelphia together where, you see Brandon Graham going crazy and, he loves John and he's talking the entire time that he's out there on the field. And you'd see Fletch kind of calm him down from time to time. And I remember even myself thinking over the years, just watching these games, like, why is he calming down Brandon Graham? Like, let him be, crazy and get out there. But I do think that there is definitely a value to that type of leadership. It's just a different type than what we've typically seen. It's not that, again, Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelce kind of a guy. Really, actually, in a way, it's more so what I would like to see out of Jalen Hurts, because that's the type of leadership that fits his personality more so. Hurts is not going to be that rah-rah guy if he's being himself either, but that doesn't mean that he can't motivate. That doesn't mean that he can't instruct. And it doesn't mean that he can't lead both by example and by demonstration or words. So, I think that it was a less flashy form of leadership, but it definitely is a void left by Fletcher on that area.
To touch on that a little bit, I feel like we see that at Jalen right now. I mean, for example, that the Washington game where AJ was joined with what's the kid Emmanuel, what's his Chase, I think it is. Forbes, yes, I'm sorry, I don't know where I got Chase from. Emmanuel Forbes joined back and forth, and they cost him that penalty after that touchdown. And AJ and Jalen were talking about that afterwards. You see that at Jalen, not so out there like Fletch, but at the same time, I completely get where you're coming from with that aspect, where he had a certain guys, he had a certain way with certain guys on the team, and you're gonna be missing that. I mean, for all we know, letting the beast of Brandon Graham out is gonna lead to like 20 something sacks next year because he's gonna be joined at the tee with everybody on it. You never know. I mean, you're letting the beast loose now, but I completely agree with that. Fletcher did have a certain style and approach to the game and a professionalism. I mean, from the finger wagging days of Jalen Mills, where he told Jalen like cut that shit out, like we're losing right now, kind of thing, to keeping Brandon Graham in check. I completely respect that. And the Eagles, losing these two is detrimental, but I don't think it's gonna be a huge setback for this season. Now looking into the season, we're definitely gonna talk about offensive linemen prospects. I want to know your opinions because I feel like I have a different opinion, but I understand the Eagles' way of life. I feel like Philly has a way of just always doing the opposite of what everybody thinks, and I don't see a huge need on the offensive line at the moment. I see a need in the future where you could get a guy in the second, third round, but can either of you convince me as to the Eagles need to get a guy in the first round for either this season or for the future?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, need is a word that you have to kind of work with loosely here, right? But that kind of builds into the argument as well, where you look at the needs that Philadelphia does have, and their biggest needs arguably are at linebacker and at safety, two spots that they're not going to draft in the first round. So you then look at the potential first round needs that they actually could potentially go for. And, you say cornerback, but at the same time, there's a lot of young depth that they like. They're big fans of Keely Ringo. There are guys in the second round, even the third round, that you can get that can potentially grow into a starting outside role. They brought back Avonte Maddox recently, of course, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to play kind of a flex position between safety and nickel. And they're hoping for a bounce back year from James Bradbury. How realistic that last part is, that's up to the eye of the beholder. But that's their feeling going into this draft, at least the perception that they've let come out. So with that being said, what is really the need? You can talk about edge rusher, but again, there are some young guys like Jalen Carter, who's probably going to play a little bit more, maybe not quite that outside edge, but he's probably going to play a little bit more end in kind of a 5-2 defense Vic Fangio may have this year. Nolan Smith, the team seems to be really high on. So even when you talk about the D-line, there's reasons to get depth, but there's not enough of a need to say this has to be a first-round guy. So all of that brings me to this next point where the right side of the line, its future is uncertain, right? So they drafted Tyler Steen with the 65th pick last year, second-round pick. I like Steen. I like him a lot. I actually think he showed quite a bit of positive play in his very limited time on the field last year. I have high hopes for him moving forward. I think under Stoutland, a freak athlete like Steen is, this is going to be a guy who's going to blend very well with the line going forward. That being said, he's not played he's not shown on the field that he can lock that position up, certainly, right? And so with the presumptive move being Cam Jurgens moving from guard to center, well, now you potentially need a new starting guard. And if Tyler Steen's not that guy, you need to go get that guy. And if you're talking about, you're not actually going to move Jurgens to center, you're going to keep him at guard, you like him there better, either you're moving Dickerson to center, and at that point you need a new guard on the left side, or you're keeping Dickerson at guard where he's been a high star player, and you talk about potentially drafting a guy in this draft like it's JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, you talk about a guy like Lane Johnson who's coming towards the end of his career, and maybe this is his last year, maybe it's not, but this is a tackle-rich first round. So, you look at trading up potentially for, a guy like a J.C. Latham as a possibility. You look at maybe staying about where you are or trading down a little bit for a guy like Tyler Guyton, who, Oklahoma guy, just like Lane Johnson. Lane's worked closely with him. Amarius Mims just bleeds, Eagles tackle. That's just exactly who you'd think to look at. So there's names, and then there's fringe guys in the first round as well that you can look at at also. But it really comes down to the fact that when you talk about need, I don't think that there is a hard and fast need at this particular position, at least not at one that the team will realistically draft in the first round.
Man, I mean, I don't know how much more to add. Zach, you covered it. I mean, you nailed it. You really did. I mean, I agree with I honestly agree with everything you just said. Like, and the reason I think that they will seriously consider taking an O-line in the first round is what Brian said, based on what they've done in the past. Like, they have shown that they value the trenches on both sides, and I feel like they've been fortifying the defensive line, right? And I feel like, for better or worse, whether the guys lived up to the hype, some of the guys last year coming out, that's on Fangio to figure out and fix. They drafted the guys that they think can play. And now you're looking at an O-line where, yeah, what do we have with Steen? We don't really know for sure. And I think originally he was supposed to be like replacing Lane Johnson, right? And with this draft, this is like I'm just looking at the names right now. It's just sick with talent. Like, you have at least 8 guys that could go in the first round. And it's deep too. There's a lot of sleeper guys that if you want to wait a little bit. So I would not be shocked at all to see them either stay put and take an offensive lineman, or even trade up a few spots and get one of these studs to just come in, like Latham, you said, Mims. I don't see them taking a center. I think that they really do want Juergens to take over the center spot. That's why they drafted him. That's why they put him under Kelsey's watch. I know he looked good at guard, but I'd be shocked if they didn't just move him to center and try to fix guard and get like a bona fide guard that they want to play there for the next 5-6 years, whatever it may be. And then this class is also deep at the offensive line. So you could get a couple guys if you want. I mean, the one guy, I'll get into some other names, but I mean, the one guy we keep talking about was Zittner. I had him in my mock drafts, and I remember when he got hurt in the Ohio-Michigan game. As soon as he got hurt, I was like, this is a Howie pick right here, because he's probably would have went higher than he is. He's a team captain, and he's a guard, so he can just come right in and then play the position. So I would not be shocked. I want a corner personally. I want a cornerback in the first round, but I just don't. They have never really, really valued corners in the first round. If they wanted one, they've missed out on so many good ones over the past couple of years. So they could already had that position taken care of. So
instead you trade for a past first round cornerback that wears orange and blue right now. Just trade all your picks for Patrick Surtain. That's what you're trying to say, Mike. I get it. I'm on the same wavelength as you right now.
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's got to be corner, and I'd be okay with offensive line. But I'm kind of okay with them not getting an edge rusher. They did what they did. They got rid of Reddick, which I don't even want to get into all that, because I'm still kind of.
Mike just said they did what they did. They buried their own grave.
They did what they did. I don't want to get into the Reddick thing. It bothers me, but in Fangio, we trust.
I don't know. I mean, like, with offensive line, right? Like, the way I'm thinking about it, obviously, from an outside perspective, Cam Jerkins is your center, because obviously he was groomed to be that guy, right? Tyler Steen's your right guard. If you're shaky about him, I feel like that's a reason why you signed a guy like Matt Hennessy, who's only 26 years old, who's on the path to being a starter and then got injured. I know the face, Zach. I get it. But listen, we've seen worse come through Stowland University and become graduates of.
Listen, it's not even that though. I love me some Henny. I bleed the stuff, right? That being said, the reason he was brought in is for that backup versatility, in my mind. Like, just knowing the Eagles,
which is fair. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, if Steen isn't that guy, at least you have that depth.
But you're talking about a guy who's on the bench becoming a starter. That's different.
It's happened. I mean, Steven was. I can never pronounce his last name. Wisniewski.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, bench guy, became a starter for the Super Bowl, did his due diligence, got paid afterwards, and then I don't know what happened to him after 2 years, but still, like, I feel like the Eagles, they love these plug-and-play guys like the Opetas, the Driscolls, who aren't great, but have the potential to be better. And I feel like Hennessy could possibly be better, and it buys you time where, like, you can actually freestyle in the first round and make Mike and I very happy and just go cornerback. Or you can go edge, or you can go.
You're gonna act like I don't want a corner. Like
Listen,
all
no,
of a
no,
sudden,
I've seen your mock draft. We need to talk about this offline, okay?
my first
Let's talk
one
about
was
this right
about
now.
Wiggins. I picked Wiggins in my first mock draft.
You picked Verse. I saw you picked the Verse in
I
the
picked
second
your
mock
guy.
draft.
It's my latest mock draft. It's different. I'm not gonna write about the same guy every time.
It's copy paste, bro. You know how to write it, but just copy paste. But I just feel like you could go like Mike said, like this is a very deep class with offensive line. I completely agree with that. I mean, I got yelled at by the two guys that I wanted deeper in the draft. But I feel like you have the ability to freestyle in the first round. Freestyle enough where you could turn that first round pick into a Jair Alexander or Patrick Surtain if need be, and pull off an AJ Brown style trade. And it's still eat in the second round because you have 2 second round picks where you could get a Rosengarten and wait into the third or fourth round. You could get a Greenfield as well. Like is that deep of a class where you can have guys, bring them in, develop them, and let them ride the bench for the next 3 years. You know, learning from Lane Johnson. Did I make you mad?
No, it's I'm sorry, I didn't hear a question in there.
There was no question. We're just conversing right now.
I do agree in theory with it. You know, so one of mine, I don't want to necessarily call him a draft darling because I feel like that has like an implication that you know, this is some kind of gem that you found lower down, and this guy is much higher on most people's boards than that. But Patrick Paul out of Houston's my guy who I kind of feel that way about. You know, a guy who has a ton of really raw talent that Jeff Stoutland could really get the most out of, and he sits for a year, maybe 2, and then you're looking at a potential Pro Bowl caliber player. You know, I do think that you can even say similar things about Roger Rosengarten, who I know, Brian, you're a big fan of. You know, there's guys like that at the tackle positions, you know, who you can really kind of groom into that role. If Kingsley Suamatian oh man, I knew I butchered that one. Suamatia falls down to you in the second round. Like obviously that's a situation where, you know, you can grow him as well. That's a guy who I think, you know, if the talent pool wasn't so rich a tackle, he's a first round tackle this year. So that kind of goes into what Mike was saying, just about how deep this crew is. So, you know, there is that option a little bit later down. Listen, there's future drafts too. The draft doesn't go away after this year. So, you know, it's
Wait,
not
there's a next year too?
That's what they're saying.
That's the thing.
That's per sources. There will be a draft next year.
I mean, per sources, though, the world was supposed to end on April 8th, 2024. But hey, we're still here.
We're still here. So when you're looking at, you know, when you can potentially add that replacement for Lane Johnson specifically, there's time. I know Ron mentioned in the chat saying Lane has 3 years. I think he has that in him of competitive play for sure. But again, we've seen it twice this offseason of guys retiring before they're cooked. And that potentially could be the Lane Johnson situation as well.
Yeah,
I have a question.
He's had injury issues, so you never know what's going on there with him.
That as well. But retiring before you cook, does that apply to like regular people as well, or is that just only a football thing?
I'm trying to retire ASAP.
I'm trying to retire since yesterday.
the second I can. I got my dream job for 1 month. I'm ready to retire. No, it's you know, I think depending on what you do, I think that if you have I don't necessarily want to call it a craft, but you know, if you have some type of creative career, I see that as potentially something. You know, I can imagine a chef, for instance, choosing to retire before their skills gone. You know, a master architect, someone I could see, someone working in music composition. You know, anybody such as that. Ron's already ahead of the curve, retiring already. Congrats, Ron.
What Ron did for a living that he retired.
That's a good question. Ron, let us know in the chat.
How creative does a craft have to be to retire early? Like, can we get really creative, or like?
I mean, you know, without naming what your day job is, I'll tell you, not your day job.
Oh, so Ron was actually a baker. Nice, man.
Man, now we just got to find a butcher and a candlestick maker. Look at that.
We got the butcher right here, Jay Fizz. What's going on, man? How you doing?
There we go.
So in this draft, I mean, we all have our favorites, right? But if the Eagles are going first round, who's your guys that you feel like the Eagles should invest in, and why? Like, I personally, I'm so hell bent on the Eagles not doing this in the first round that I'm personally avoiding this. idea. Like I don't want to even invest in anybody in the first round, but I know they're enamored with that kid from Washington. The I don't want to butcher his
Baltimore.
name. Yes.
Yeah.
I know that there's talks about them trading up for a player like him, whatever case may be, but they're enamored with him. I mean, who's your go-to guys in this draft? Zach is a big fan of Fontenot as well. And yeah, again, I fell in love with Chop Robinson. I'm in love with Nate Wiggins, Quinion Mitchell. I just don't have offensive linemen in my pool right now to embrace.
So I'll speak on Fontenot first, and then I'll go to my guy thereafter. But which, spoiler alert, my guy's not Fontenot. Great player, hell of a player. Biggest problem with him is that he's not a tackle. That's the same problem that I would have with Graham Barton out of Duke. These are guys who I think are immense talents, especially talking about Fontenot. But if I'm drafting a guy in the first round, I need it to be a tackle. I can't excuse doing that for guard. And part of that is that me personally, I do still believe in Tyler Steen and what he can bring to the table. Part of that is that I know that you can get solid guard talent later on. I mean, you can trade down in the second round and still be able to draft a Christian Haynes, and you would potentially be just as well off. I mean, you're talking about the difference maybe between a Pro Bowler and an All Pro, but even still, that's a high quality starting player just waiting there late in the second round. So that's why I'm out on trading up for Fontenot. If he fell to 22, which he won't, even still, I don't love the idea, but you could convince me. But for me, it's tackle or bust if you're drafted in the first round. And to kind of talk about every guy all at once, the guy I think the Eagles would like the most, or rather would be most likely to draft, is Tyler Guyton. But the guy who I think that they should look at most severely is Amarius Mims out of Georgia. And I get it, another Georgia Bulldog, another year in the draft. Guy's an absolute mountain of a man. And somebody who he's not ready to be a quality starter yet, but he doesn't have to be, right? So you put him under Stoutland for again a year, possibly more than that. Let him learn behind Lane. This guy, I honestly think that he could be the best tackle out of this entire draft under Jeff Stoutland. That's the type of ceiling that he has. So to be able to land that guy at 22, I think that's a reasonable pick, even though, again, it wouldn't be my first choice in terms of position.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? I mean, how are you going to trade up? This guy Joe Alt is the real deal. I mean, I've seen him go in like top 3, they're saying, right? So I don't know if you're going to trade up that high, but I mean, he's a legit left tackle. You probably move over to the right side, right? So he'd be my top guy if you want to go that high. But if you're going to wait it out, I really like Latham, and I like this kid Jordan Morgan. Now he's a little more of a project, I think. People are saying he might be more suited to play guard in the NFL than tackle, but he's played tackle at the highest level of college football. So I like him. And then I think the guy Zach mentioned earlier in the show, the kid from BYU, I'm going to botch his name, Sumataya. He's a project that he really does have Eagles written all over him if they want to take him at the end of the first round. I don't know if he maybe sneaks to the second round, but those would be the three guys I've highlighted on my list, depending on how everything shakes out and if they actually want to trade up and devote some assets to a first round tackle.
Yeah, J.C. Latham in particular, I think is interesting. You named him there. He's a guy who's kind of risen up draft boards over the past month plus or so, and he's somebody who I think you look at some of these tackles. Brian and I were talking about it just the other day. There's not another Lane Johnson in this draft, but J.C. Latham is a guy with size and a unique blend of that strength and athleticism and. That at least is the archetype that Lane Johnson holds. So I think that you could definitely look at a guy like Latham and say, hey, this is the guy who's going to be the heir apparent to Lane Johnson moving forward.
And he's young too. He's only 21. So I'd rather get a young guy that you can really have for a long time.
What about the kid from Duke? That I mean, I've seen a couple mock drafts where they have the Eagles going for Graham Barton. I mean, Zach is already shaking his head. Not sure if it's something I did or if he's talking about the kid from Duke. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are drafting him in their mock drafts. I mean, I'll go with Mike first. Mike, do you feel any good feelings about the kid from Duke, Graham Barton?
I mean, what I have read, the scouting reports I've read, I haven't watched a lot of tape, but what I've seen, yeah, he's potentially could be a stud. Why I wouldn't necessarily want, he's not that high on my list, is because I think he's a center, right? He's more suited to play center, and I want to see Juergens play center. I think, remember that Dickerson was supposed to be the center, and then Kelsey stayed, and then Juergens was supposed to be the center. So are we going to keep doing this game? They drafted Juergens to be the center, put him at center, and let's pick a tackle.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is interesting about him is that he has the attitude to play interior O-line. That's if I'm looking for a compliment, that's he's again a very talented player. It's not about these guys aren't good players. It's about what position they play. So for Barton, again, he's expected to move to the interior. Mike, you're exactly right, specifically at center. So really, you're looking at two centers going in the first round. Between him there and JPG, or JPJ rather. So between those two, again, like you said, how long are we going to keep playing this game? We're drafting the next Jason Kelsey, and now, well, this guy's the next Jason Kelsey. This guy is, how long exactly are you going to do that? It's just not something that I have any interest in. And again, even if you're talking about playing him at guard instead of center, I feel confident enough with the potential guard play moving forward that this pick would be better off spent elsewhere. And whether that's a Chop Robinson, whether that is
Nate
Wiggins, whether it's like, all right, so let's talk about this real quick. I went over this in my mock draft.
Wait, which one? The first one, the second one, or the one you're working on?
The second one. All right.
The one that just, a lot of people getting confused out there. Let's clarify.
My most recent mock draft, which you can actually read on Metro Philadelphia, because our site was acting a little finicky. But it's also on PSN too. That's right. Yeah. It's linked on there.
No, I removed it due to bylaws and all that extra stuff.
I will remove you from this show. I will drive up there so fast. You don't even, just watch. But the whole thing with this draft that's really interesting is the potential run on players that we could see, right? So obviously quarterback's been the big thing that's been discussed. Talking about Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy. Like there's at least 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10. There could be as many as 6 in the top 15. Like that is how crazy this draft is looking in terms of quarterback. On top of that, you're looking at a solid receiver class where you have Malik Neighbors, you have Rome Odunze, you have, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., and people are constantly fighting over who is the best of those 3 receivers, right? And probably it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. who's going to win out in the end. That's my expectation, but I don't think you can necessarily make a wrong move either way. But then you talk about a guy like Brock Bowers, who's supposed to be a generational tight end talent. I don't
do it.
Love him personally, but no. I'm not on that team. I'm not on my WIP-ish today.
I had so many texts from friends about him. That's like the trendy. He's like the Kyle Pitts from a couple of years ago. I don't want
exactly.
Look, I don't know if you know my opinions on Goddard. I'm not a huge Dallas Goddard fan. I think we do need a tight end.
Oh, we know your opinions from the Eagles chat.
Not that early.
Opinions on everybody right now.
But not that early. But he will go that early for someone, right? So you're talking about 4 to 6 quarterbacks. You're talking about 3 wide receivers. You're talking about a tight end. That's 10 picks right there. Then you factor in all these offensive linemen, right? And you can go on a large run there. So I say this all just to get to the point of there's going to be talented players who are going to fall in other positions. You're talking about Dallas Turner, defensive end out of Alabama. You're talking about guys like, we've already talked about Keon Mitchell, Terry and Arnold, some of the top corners, Jared Verse, who I put in my most recent mock draft, making Florida State the new Georgia is definitely a model that I think that the Eagles can find some success in this season. And then the one guy who, and we're going to talk about this when we eventually get to defensive tackles, because we will talk about them at some point. But if there's a way that Byron Murphy can end up as a Philadelphia Eagle by the time this draft is over. I'm coming around. That might be my favorite outcome out of all the possibilities, just because he's such an elite talent and he has that positional flexibility that Jalen Carter does as well. To be able to have, if you're running like a 52 lineup and your nose and your two ends, you're talking about running Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Byron Murphy. Oh, it's over, dude. And then you put Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat on the outside. That is an absolutely sick defensive line.
To be clear, this is the first time I've seen Zach smile in like 7 months. So
it's disgusting. I'm so excited for the idea of drafting a guy that the Eagles will never even look at. But he is my new favorite first round pick, bringing Byron Murphy in. And part of it is I never really thought it was possible, but now that you're seeing all these trends start to run, on top of that, the Eagles, they're known to not necessarily pick out of their slot. They trade up, they trade down, whatever the case may be, whatever suits them best. Yeah, I could definitely see a situation where they trade up for Byron Murphy and you move up. There's rumors about trading up to 16 with Seattle. Perfect spot to land him right then and there. So I'm excited for the draft, if nothing else.
That's fair. That's fair. Shout out to Zach Tyler in the chat. Troy Franklin needs to be an Eagle. I completely agree with that. All right. So we talked about the first round, right? Obviously, there's 2 out of 3 people in this show that feels like they don't have to go offensive lineman in the first round. Everybody not named Zach. Deeper in the draft, who's your guys? Second round, third round, like who's a guy that has to be an Eagle if they don't go offensive lineman in the first round?
So are we still talking O-line or are we talking anybody later in the draft?
No, you're getting too excited now. Offensive line.
Okay, I'm just checking, man. I'm just checking. So obviously I named Patrick Paul as kind of my guy a little bit later on, but when you kind of go a little bit past that, a guy that you can have kind of relatively late. There's a interior lineman out of Wisconsin, Tanner Bortolini, who just tested phenomenally. Just an absolutely gifted athlete. And if you're talking about spending one of those late round picks on a guy, I think he's absolutely a great depth move. Someone who can really kind of learn side by side with Matt Hennessy and learn how to play that combo guard center role. Which is something that I don't know that Hennessy's going to be here past this year. So if you can kind of train the next man on, I think that's definitely something of value there. But yeah, Tanner Bortolini is definitely somebody who I'm looking at.
Yeah, how late? Like I was, I think Zach already mentioned Christian Haynes, who's getting a lot of hype right now, but that'd be another guy that I'd be big on getting in round 2, or if he slipped to round 3 from UConn. Javon Foster's another guy I kind of like. He's a tackle. He could be there maybe the round 4. He's got, he's a little bit of a project, but he could have a lot of ceiling potential there. And then another guy I kind of like that I've seen him as low as round 6, maybe round 5, is Nathan Thomas out of Louisiana Lafayette. 6'6", like 315, long arms. I'd be okay with them grabbing him really late, or maybe they grab 2. Why not grab him late and grab someone else early? This is a deep draft, guys. Like they have a lot of options here, and with like I said at the beginning, with the way they've always valued the trenches, they're going to get someone. It's just how early are they going to decide to take them?
I think and that's what I did in my first mock draft was I went, I think it was like second or third round for Rosengarten, just because I feel like if you're gonna get somebody to be the right tackle of the future, I feel like him coming in, his massive size. I mean, the guy's a freaking manimal. I feel like at tackle, learning from Lane Johnson and just riding the bench for the next 2 to 3 years, however long it takes for Lane to retire, would be beneficial for Philly. There's also a kid that I feel like they could get later on. Garrett, forgive me if I butchered the name because I can't find my mock draft right now. But Garrett Greenfield, I believe it is. Don't know why, but I can't find my mock draft. Garrett Greenfield, I believe it is. Another tackle, great hands. Another massive offensive lineman. I think he's like 6'6", if I'm not mistaken. Needs work, needs development, things of that sort. But I feel like him or Rosengarten would be great and beneficial for the offensive line going forward for the next 2 to 3 years at least.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the mentality is finding the future role players, right? So The Eagles did lose some of that depth. Jack Driscoll's not going to be here this season, so where do we find that potential swing tackle, that potential guard tackle of the future? That's something that I think is definitely going to be at the forefront of what they're looking at. And then kind of in addition to that, I already mentioned that kind of guard center hybrid position. And they have Matt Hennessy for now, but they'd obviously like to have a bit of a younger project who's here a little bit more long term. So a guy like, again, Tanner Bortolini is definitely where he kind of slots in. But it's about kind of replenishing the cabinet in a sense. And that's something that the Eagles and every team faces this problem, but they have holes, and then they have depth issues across the rotation on the roster. So definitely a lot of stuff to do, but they have, I think, it's 8 picks heading into the draft, and they could end up with more, they could end up with less, but either way, it's a solid place to start. And I would be surprised if they end up exactly where they're slotted to pick now by the time that the draft is over with.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. To answer Ron's question in the chat, he's asking, as a Giants, who are my Giants looking to draft in the first? Apparently, because Zach started this fictitious rumor. They're going to draft Saquon Barkley, and he's going to end up in Midnight Green at the end of the draft. So now we kind of
you're drafting another running back in the top 10 of the draft. Yeah, that's your solution in your made up scenario. Okay,
just do it. So he could be an Eagle in 2 or 3 years. What's it called? So we kind of went over why the Eagles, could possibly go offensive lineman, right? Now, why is that? What is your hellbent reason as to why they actually will go against the grain and actually just do something to surprise everybody, not go offensive line, not go in the trenches? Because a lot of people are feeling in the industry, they're feeling a little bit weird that the Eagles actually went ahead and signed a Saquon Barkley for the money that they signed him for. So it's kind of like, are they going against their past ways, or are they starting something newer where they're actually going to be ahead of the curve with everybody? Why do you feel like Philly should not go offensive lineman?
Yeah, I think it's kind of for the reason that you stated, right? So they have gone against their typical philosophy by signing Saquon Barkley. They're paying receivers out of the wazoo now. They're showing a level of importance. They went out and they signed one of the more talented linebackers in free agency. Granted, they got themselves a team-friendly deal, but he was still one of the larger names on the market. So, you look at that situation there and you say, well, hey, maybe change is possible for Harry Roseman and for the Eagles. And, the problem is that, their philosophy is building through the trenches. So, you may see change and not realize it, right? So you may see them go after an edge prospect and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's still defensive line. It's like, yeah, well, it's not another offensive lineman. That's I think that is a little bit of change in and of itself. But for them to go out and target a cornerback, I think it's unlikely. But I think that this is a great draft to do it in, because you're talking about. And I saw some Nate Wiggins in the draft in the chat earlier by Jonathan there. But Nate Wiggins is a guy, like, if he falls to you at 22, that's incredible.
Yes.
That's an immense talent there at 22. One of the best opportunities to draft a corner in years. And there's other guys, later in this draft as well. Like, this is a solid corner draft when you're looking through the first few rounds. You're talking about being able to trade down. I know Eric's a big fan of Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I don't hate the guy. But, if you're talking about later in that first round, TJ Tampa, I think, is an underrated player who I think he'll sneak into the first round, and I think he'll be quite the player. But you're talking about guys like Tyree Jackson, who, if it wasn't for his age, he would be talked about up there with Kenyon Mitchell if he was as young as some of these other guys. So there's definitely a lot of talent to be had. A lot of slot talent, yes, in this draft, which Philadelphia doesn't need for this year. Talking about Avonte Maddox coming back, but there's some guys on the outside as well that I think can really kind of provide a solution for the team going forward. But being able to land Nate Wiggins at 22, or even trade down for Wiggins, it's honestly the 10 out of 10, A+ move.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the stating the obvious, but it's going to depend how the board shakes out, right? I mean, how things are moving. If they're going to like the Eagles aren't ones to like just do what everyone tells them that they're supposed to do. If that's going on, they're going to do the exact opposite. Like, I'll take you all the way back. Remember the Earl Thomas year? Like he was sitting there. Like they needed a safety. He was sitting there, and they're like, no, we're not. We're going to make a trade, and we're not going to take this guy because that's too easy of a pick. So that's the only thing where I could see them going wild. And like, would it shock me to see them take a wide receiver in the first round? It would not. I could see them doing that. That's something crazy enough that they would do. I don't think they'll take a tight end that we talked about. I think that's a little too crazy. But wide receiver, I could see them do. Another edge rusher would be a no-brainer for them, even a D tackle. Like we keep talking about corners, and I hope that they do take a corner, but it's going to depend how this board shakes out, because if it's easy, if it's the corners there, if Wiggins is sitting there where he's supposed to be taken and it's the pick and everyone's like, Mel Kiper's like, oh, this is easy, they're taking him. They're not going to take him. They're going to take someone you never heard of, probably.
100% agree. They're going to come out of left field and pick somebody that should have been selected in the third round, and we're all going to be very disappointed.
Marcus Smart.
Going to get another Jalen Rager.
Marcus Smith.
Yeah, Marcus Smith. But yeah, I mean, so Philly does have the options on the board. We kind of covered we've covered edge, we've covered cornerback, we covered over offensive line this week. We'll cover another position next week. First and foremost, you're getting a little too trigger happy. Okay, you gotta relax yourself. Relax yourself.
Byron Murphy.
One thing is, I want to definitely do is put a spotlight a little bit on Mike. Mike came to us before last season, and has been a huge contributor to what we were able to develop in the Eagles team this season. So, big you're getting your flowers right now. I want you to just put it out there, pretty much. Best way to put it. So I do appreciate you coming on, and it definitely won't be the last time you're coming on, because we do appreciate you actually being on the show. So yeah, for the people that are just at first hearing from you, if you don't mind plugging away your information and let them know where they can follow you at.
Yeah, man, it's just at Mike_Gregor on Twitter, or whatever Elon Musk is calling it these days. And then yeah, I'm really on Philly Sports Network. That's my major publication right now that you can see my work. I freelance for the Eagles website, but I haven't done a lot of that recently, but hopefully I'll get some more of that going this year when the season starts. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I think. What else am I doing right now? I don't know what else I'm working on.
That's pretty
I'm
crazy.
like, it's weird. That. Like I'm like this like part-time freelance. I don't really have a full-time thing, so it's like it like messes with your brain. I've been reading a lot of books, and I'm ready for France right now. And I saw the comment about wine. I am a cognac guy, but I am going to drink a lot of wine also.
Just come back to the One Piece, bro.
As well, you should. It is crazy thinking about, so Mike and I, we went from talking Sixers for a good long while, when he had more of a Sixers role. And now here we are sitting back talking Eagles, and, just encourage all you guys out there just to check out his work. Definitely a bright mind. And for as talented as he is and as good as he is as an Eagles writer, he's an even better guy. So definitely check out his stuff. It's A+ quality work.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you how it happened last year. Zach slid in my DM and said, "Hey, you need to bring this guy to the Eagles team." I'm not even BSing you. That's exactly how it went. Slid in my DM, and he was like, "Hey, you should interview this guy." I told LJ, "Hey, like,
I mean, it's like you act like you don't leave your window open for me, though. Like, I mean, you act like
I love talking to you. Like, and you know what drives me nuts is Zach has my number. He's like one of the few people that has my number, and he still slides into my DMs on Slack. He doesn't text me. He just slides into my DMs like like social media opposed to just texting me. But
is Slack social media, or is it a work surface platform? And we're talking business.
What's
and one
the
thing
difference?
that people
here
work on social media know is that I'm all about business.
Oh, wow. Okay. Anyways, Zach recommended Mike. We brought Mike to the table. Mike wowed Liam. He definitely had my bid in the moment I read I forgot what article I read on Heavy, but it blew me away, and I was like, okay, like let's get this guy on the team.
Just blew right out of your mind.
It just blew me out. Just blew my mind. And then hey, another thing is Mike was actually promoted to lead writer during his first year with PSN as well, which is also a huge testament to his contribution to the site and his work ethic as well. We replaced Greg Ward with Mike, actually.
You guys are too much. Thank you, though. I love writing for you guys. You guys are awesome, and anything I can do. I know I tell you guys all the time it's slacking a little bit, but once we get kicked up here, I'll be back at it. I'll get some more stories going, and hopefully some more exclusives. I got to get back down and talking to my people at the Eagles so they don't forget about me down there.
You just reminded me. I have a half-written email for someone Brian is excited to talk to. That we have to straighten out some business with. So we're going to be working on some exclusives, with the Eagles team, with the Flippin the Brids team, but it's going to be a busy off season talking to some interesting people. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. You guys let me know how I can help. I do PR too. So I got both angles covered.
There you go. A little double agent. Love it.
But yeah, Mike, we really appreciate you coming on. We hope you enjoy your time in Paris with your fiance. Just come back to us in one piece. Make sure you're good when you come back.
I'll be good. Yeah, I got actually she just asked me because when we went to Italy last year, the Sixers were in the playoffs, and I'm like staying up late to watch a couple of those playoff games. I don't even know why. That was like a dumb thing to do, especially that game 7. That game 7 just like, why did I do this? It's like 7 a.m. She's like, are you going to stay up late and watch games? I'm like, nah, this is the perfect time to go. I got nothing. I'm good. The draft's
pure vacation. There it is. Pure vacation. No anxiety about Eagles news.
Yeah, and Philly's 162 games. I can miss a couple games. I'm good.
Yeah, that's my gripe with baseball still. 20 freaking games. Shut up, Zach. I know you're about to say.
Especially too many games, especially when you're a Mets fan.
Gosh. Until next week, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Zach Chavalella, Mike Greger. We're Flipping the Birds.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir.
Go Birds.
Flipping the Birds.